I don't want none of that. What is going on, everyone? This is Leonard with the Artist Collective, and we are here today with today's music industry chat. And I am so excited to talk to our guest. If you have been following along, you know that we have been bringing you content and experts from all over the industry, and we are excited today to be able to share some really good input. And we're going to be focusing on fan base growth tips. The young man that I'm about to bring to you now, coming to the stage. Okay, I was doing my best Steve Harvey. Anyway, so he's with Modern Musician, and he has. I've been able to attend a couple of his courses and just seen a lot of great feedback and a lot of great information coming from people that have been involved in his community. So we're really excited to have him here today on the Music Industry Chat. Please help me welcome Mr. Michael Walker to the chat. If I can get this going. There we go.
That countdown timer got me hyped, dude.
Right? Hey, what's up, Mark? How's it going, man? So yes, welcome to the Music Industry Chat, Michael. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come and hang with the crew and just talk to us a little bit and share some of your experience. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. This is a lot of fun. This is cool seeing, like, StreamYard is awesome. Like, we got the comment that just popped there on the screen. Was it Mark that was there?
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah,
Mark.
You can.
What's up, man?
Yeah, you can bring in comments. I love StreamYard. If you guys want to learn how to use StreamYard, hit me up. Um, but yes, so yeah, please help me welcome Michael. And so yeah, I've mentioned I've had a chance to see some of your webinars, and then after that, I went and stalked you guys on YouTube and things like that. But I don't want to tell your story. I want you to tell your story. But could you tell us just a little bit about your role in the music business and just kind of maybe how you got started?
Sure thing. Yep. So I started with my band Paradise Fears out of high school. We grew up in a very small town called Vermillion, South Dakota. And long story short, basically, when we started out, we made every mistake in the book in terms of, we had invested a lot of time and energy and money into our music, but we had no idea how to actually put it in front of new people and how to actually get people out to the shows. We booked our first tour, and we were so excited. We thought we were so cool because we had booked this tour, and then quickly realized that you actually need to know how to bring people out to the shows. So I remember playing for the bartender in the back of the room, and at the time, we were like 6 of us in the band. We were living and sleeping in vans and Walmart parking lots, and long story short, basically crawled over broken glass and tried a lot of different stuff to figure out what works, and ended up getting to a point where we released an album that hit #2 on iTunes, had about 24 million Spotify streams, and
Nice.
and toured worldwide. And I don't want to ramble on about my story too long.
No, that's fine. But yeah, and so with the kind of, obviously you were in the band and you were the keyboard player, correct?
Right.
Awesome. What? And so then, what was kind of the transition period of time, or what happened from the Paradise Spheres time frame to now what we know, at least what some of us know as the Modern Musician?
Yeah. So about 2.5, 3 years ago, I started my family with my wife, and at the time, I was gone for 10, 11 months out of the year with Paradise Fears. And as much as I loved the experience of playing shows and connecting with fans and people telling stories about how our music helped them, it was also really challenging trying to figure out how am I going to provide for my family in terms of being present and not being gone all the time. And I was really looking for a way that I could support them without relying on the band as much. And really luckily stumbled upon some mentors in the business business space, who kind of taught me hey, you can take the stuff you learned with your band and you can help other artists. And so I've been doing that, and it's become a really awesome passion and career, helping. I'm essentially the basketball player who became a coach and is helping other basketball players now.
That's cool. And so, with Modern Musician, how many, over the last few years, how many, I guess, iterations would you say, you've gone through? I'm going to assume with any new startup, there's probably some broken glass that you crawled through, maybe business wise as well. Um, but yeah, is this kind of like what you thought it would be, or have you kind of changed course, or how's that, this process of like building that business been?
Yeah, you mean with modern musician in particular?
Yeah,
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 it's definitely, I mean, in a lot of ways, it was like when we started Paradise Fears, how we were kind of starting from scratch. And, in the first year of Modern Musician, it was like, I was at a point where on the tail end of Paradise Fears, I had just bought a house with my wife and we were moving in to start our family and didn't really have any extra savings or money like lying around to start a business with. And I remember not knowing, like I'd done this stuff with my band, but I'd never started a business or done anything like
right.
this. And so starting the business, I invested in a few different business coaching programs and mentors, and invested about $36,000. And really took about 9 months before I started gaining traction. And I like had to try a bunch of different things. So I tried different like business ideas and pivoted, but it's essentially the same thing that helped our band, I think, starting out is what ended up really helping the business get started. And in a nutshell, I think what that was like actually having conversations with the people that we were trying to connect with, and like real like face-to-face conversations and getting in tune. And it's like going on stage and playing a show. If you don't get the guitar in tune first, then it's not going to sound good no matter how good it is.
Right.
So I think that was really the biggest transition was getting in tune and getting connected with people.
That's cool. Yeah, and it reminds me of this. I don't know if it's a quote or a saying, but I always try to, think about what my North Star is going to be, so to speak. But, you know, the quote or the saying said something like, it doesn't matter, how well you climb the ladder if it's leaning on the wrong wall.
Mm.
And so it's like being able to know what your end all goal is, and if you guys are watching this, this can apply to anything, whether it's your music, your personal relationships, whatever. But I always like that focus because I know I tend to get in the weeds sometimes and think about, okay, what's the next thing I need to do? What's the next thing I need to do? But sometimes it's good to take a step back, talk to people face to face, get a chance to interact with people that may have, been where you are wanting to go, or, might be two or three rungs up a ladder, and just kind of assess on what wall you're leaning on. So that's definitely that reminded me of that when you mentioned that. So that's very cool.
Mm. Yeah, I love that analogy. That's great.
So yeah, so with Modern Musician and Morgan, thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you for tuning in. We're just getting going, girl. But
You just wait, Morgan.
yeah,
We got some stuff drawing lined up, or is it?
So yeah, with Modern Musician, and before we went live, we talked a little bit about how you know what you're offering for musicians now is kind of a hybrid of what you've learned from the business and starting the business, but also a little bit about kind of what you learned as in Paradise Spheres. Um, so with that kind of combo, what are maybe some high level tips for fan base growth that you might be able to share with our artist collective community here, and also our indie band coach community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the analogy that I use sometimes when it comes to techniques or strategies or tactics, one mistake that I see a lot is artists kind of looking at what's worked for other artists and then trying to replicate by doing exactly what they did. And the analogy that I use that it's sort of like it's like we're all surfers in a sense, where we're surfers, and there's these waves that have passed already. That maybe that used to be how the industry worked, is that like people like caught this wave, got huge momentum, but now it's like a lot of people are trying to catch up to this wave that's already passed. But if you're smart, you're kind of like looking behind you and you're kind of feeling the waves in your center. You're like what's cresting right now, and if you swim along with it at the right time, then it can really shoot you forward and give you a lot of momentum. But it also takes a little bit more vision and a little bit more confidence, because essentially, like, the thing that's already passed, it's easy to be like, yeah, that works, it's in the past. But the thing that's like kind of working right now that you're catching is something that's a little bit more like, you have to have a bit of faith, or you have to lean into it, and you have to see what's working right now. So in regards to like Paradise Fear, some of the things that we did with Paradise Fears that got us to where we got to aren't necessarily the things I would recommend nowadays. Like nowadays, there's some really cool stuff with lookalike audiences and targeting and paid traffic funnels. And that's, how we've built a 7-figure business in the past couple of years, as opposed to, some of the stuff that we did with Paradise Fears. But that being said, the same principles apply a lot of the times. It's just like the tools that are different. And so, so like there's a lot of more geeky stuff nowadays, I think, that you can do. And I'm sure we'll kind of dig into the geekiness of it a little bit.
Well, yeah, we've got access to more information now and tools than what we did. And I just exactly what you just said. I was thinking about how I started in my band, and at the time it was just about how to use Facebook. There weren't any quote unquote ad platforms or business manager back in the day. And also I have a soft spot for back in the day when how many ever people showed up and signed up for your Facebook page actually saw your stuff. I remember those days so well. But one day some boost button showed up. I'm like, what's this? Little did we know. But yeah, so seeing how things can change, and obviously we're in a time of crazy growth for things like virtual events and live streaming and things like that. But that kind of leads me to believe just what you said in terms of the frameworks, in terms of the principles, the same thing that you can apply to actual stages are things that you can probably apply to virtual stages and live streaming and things like that. So as we kind of talk about these fan base growth tips, it technically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but technically it's the principles and it's the ideas behind these that you'll be able to apply to these, for those of you watching, whatever type of stage you're thinking about. And I think that's the cool thing about that wave analogy that I loved a lot. So that was cool.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, because I mean, a lot of waves, they're similar. Like they're made up of the same kind of thing, but there's still different waves, and there's different aspects of it. So different tools you can use. But if you get good at catching a wave, then you can probably learn how to catch the next wave too.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I understand that you like to draw.
I do. Sometimes well, sometimes not very well. But I'm not a visual artist.
That's cool. I actually have I don't have any up right now, but I actually have flip charts up around my office. I used to be a corporate trainer, so I just love putting up like huge flip chart papers and just going and writing on the wall. So I totally get it. But I also love this whole whiteboard thing, doggone it. So just in terms of
it's working.
Oh, there we go. So yeah, just in terms of thinking about, ideas that you would be able to provide, if I can get our format here, we go. Just ideas and tips that you would be able to provide for growing fan base. Can you share a little bit about just like the framework that you use?
You got it. Yeah, I love doing this. So one of the biggest challenges that I see right now when it comes to musicians and growing your audience is that there's so much information online right now, and so many different people kind of pulling for your attention, that most of us have learned to filter out the majority of really what comes at us online. Because if we didn't have this filter, we would just die. Like there's so much information. So we really see maybe like 1% of what actually comes at us online actually makes it through our filter. And the rest of it goes under the filter. We don't even really notice it. And one of the biggest challenges, or one of the biggest mistakes that I see is that a lot of times artists, either they get some advice, or they think that if I just post 10 times a day on social media and that's all I do, then magically people are going to start to discover me as long as I'm consistent. And because a lot of these artists, like they have full-time jobs or they don't really have a lot of time or energy to really invest into these posts, and they're trying to do it so frequently, it's like a second job. And they're just posting all this content, and it's not necessarily the highest quality content. And because it's not necessarily the tip of the iceberg, most of it's just getting filtered out anyways. And so it can be really discouraging because it's like they're posting all this stuff and it seems like there's not really a whole lot of response and it takes a ton of time. So what I recommend instead is really focusing on what we call your tip of the iceberg content. And thinking about, what are the 1 to 3 pieces of content that you have that are the most valuable pieces of content that are really going to make the best first impression on a new fan. And how do we put those in front of them so it's the very first thing that they see, instead of having to like dig through 10 weeks worth of dog photos or selfies where I love dog photos myself, but if someone's just discovering you for the first time, they don't know about you, they don't really care about you yet, then they don't care that much about some of the personal stuff.
Sure.
And so step 1 to 3 pieces of that tip of the iceberg content. A lot of times what we see working best for that right now is like just a really high quality song. Like if you invest working with a producer, or you really kind of get 1 to 3 songs, if you just Google like producer and name of album that you really like and start doing some research, you can find the right producers. So that could be tip of the iceberg. Sometimes having a nice music video could be a good tip of the iceberg content. But really, you just need at least one of those things that you can put in front of a new fan. And once you have that, the analogy that we use for it is that it's kind of like, now you need to start the fire, right? So it's like the tip of the iceberg content are these 3 big logs that you can start the fire with. And the issue that you run into is, even, and a lot of people even watching this right now might be at this stage where it's like, you've honed your craft, you got the music, you have a tip of the iceberg content, but then it's like, how do you put it in front of the right people, right? So how do you actually build the fire? And so the tip of the iceberg content is like 3 big logs for the fire, compared to this stuff is more maybe kind of like wet grass, or just something that's kind of hard to light. And so the issue is that even if you have the tip of the iceberg content, even if you have those 3 logs, you put them into a fire pit and you sit next to them, nothing's going to happen. It's just like you're just sitting next to the logs, unless something crazy happens. It's like lightning strikes. Which sometimes you'll hear stories, or it's like, she got discovered by Beyonce on the side of the road or something like that. Right. So like sometimes it happens, but it's not really it's not a strategy to rely on. And so let me see. I think I accidentally. There we go. So really, what we need to figure out is how do we drive traffic? How do we generate flames for the logs? How do we put the music in front of the right people? So the 3 best strategies that I found that are working right now for artists are, 1, so you're going to have to excuse me. I've drawn this a lot, but I still haven't mastered drawing a flamethrower. It looks like a blob, or like, I was going to say like a boomerang, but it doesn't even look that good.
No, that's good. It's a Facebook or a flamethrower. Is that a Facebook flamethrower?
Yeah. Okay. It's a Facebook flamethrower. Yeah.
Nice.
We could probably say like Facebook IG. And so one of the 3 strategies that's working really well right now, but you have to be careful with it, make sure you're doing it the right way, or else it can just be like a waste of money, is using paid traffic. So using like Facebook and Instagram and literally driving traffic to your songs. And there's a lot of good things about it. I love this source of traffic because it's like a flamethrower. It's like you pull the trigger and it goes whoosh, and it shoots out flames. And the issue with it that I run into a lot is that you need to have a funnel on the back end. You need to be smart about how you're actually setting up these campaigns, or else it's like you could spend a ton of money just boosting posts and stuff, and you might get some initial like traffic or exposure, but it's not really sustainable, and you're not really doing anything on the back end with it. So in order to do that in a sustainable way, you need to make sure that you actually have like a funnel, or you have something that you're sending people to, so you're liquidating your ad spend. But I do really like that, and I'll dig into that a little bit more and talk about something called virtual tour hacking, which is what we're running right now, which after investing $130,000 in the past year is like easily the number 1 thing that's working for us right now. Nice. So the second strategy that I recommend that would be kind of tough right now, but it's still a really good strategy, is what we call tour hacking. And tour hacking is sort of the physical equivalent to virtual tour hacking. So I think that you might get kind of an idea of what virtual tour hacking is just by talking about tour hacking. But with my band, when we first started out, and we grew up in a very small town, we didn't have an existing fan base. We weren't really sure how to tour successfully and get people out to the shows. And we were living in our vans, sleeping in Walmart parking lots. I remember getting like a big jar of peanut butter and a stack of flour tortillas every night. And that was like our breakfast, lunch, and dinner when we were on tour. And sometimes we throw a banana in there, and that would be like, we're living the high life. The banana peanut butter tortillas. It actually tastes pretty good.
It doesn't sound bad, actually. I think I have everything in
It's actually pretty good.
I think I have all the ingredients in there, too. Don't get me started.
Yeah, it is great. I mean, it's I think I had to order something from Tropical Smoothie Place sometime. It's basically the equivalent of a peanut butter tortilla, but they throw like some honey in there. But basically the thing that turned everything around for us was this idea that our lead singer had, and now we've come to call it tour hacking. And the idea was, there's 6 of us in the band, and we're huge fans of bands like All Time Low, Blink-182, Mayday Parade. It's like pop punk, pop rock bands. And before their shows, they'd always have thousands of people waiting in line, waiting out front to go into the show. Sometimes they'd be waiting for days in advance. Wow. And so we thought, what if we approach those people in lines and we just introduce ourselves, and we have some headphones, some clips of our songs, and we share our music and see what and just look to connect with as many people as possible. And so we started doing that. And I was a super shy, awkward kid in high school, so that didn't come naturally to me at all. I was like shaking and stuttering as we walked up to people. But what we found is that the people we were meeting were the best quality people to talk to, because they're fans of the band who were waiting in line for the show, who had already spent money to be at the show. They cared, like they support music. They're the people who get the most value from music. And we just found that it worked incredibly well. And we sold 24,000 CDs doing that in about 4.5 months. And because of that, we went from living in our vans to selling 24,000 CDs. And one of the bands we were doing it on was called All Time Low. And they had millions of fans, and they heard about what we were doing, and they gave us the opportunity to open for them on their next tour.
Okay, so hold up. Let me frame this real quick, because I just now realized something. So you were fans of this band, and real quick, was your music also similar? Is that what you're kind of saying?
Absolutely.
Well? Okay.
Yeah, we were influenced by them big time.
Okay, so all this time, those 24,000 CDs and talking to people in lines, were you also going to the show, or were you going just to tour hack?
Yeah, so most of the time what happened was it was just tour hacking, because they were playing like dates between the cities where they had a bus driver, they could drive overnight, they could sleep. We couldn't do that. So a lot of times we had to, like, after we did it, we would leave for the next show. That being said, there was one show, I remember in Nashville, they played twice because they had like sold out the show. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to the show, and it was awesome. And I remember after the show, walking up to, because after the shows, a lot of times they went out and they would like meet people, take pictures and sign autographs and stuff. And before each show, we did this thing where we would give someone in line one of our CDs and say, hey, they usually come after the shows. Would you mind like giving Alex, their lead singer, the CD after the show? Be like, yeah, sure. And so, we had been doing this for a few weeks, and then we had this opportunity to actually stay for the show. And I remember seeing it, and it was amazing. And after the show, they came out, and they were like, behind a fence, but they were like meeting people. And so I remember walking up to them and kind of like being like, hey, this is what we're doing. And, I've got the CD, like, here you go. And I remember he looked at it, and he smiled, and he said, you know what? We actually have like 14 of these CDs in our van right now. We've listened to it, we enjoy it. But you know what? Like, you probably need this more than us. Like, you can sell this. So here you go. Like, but we listened to it and we enjoyed it, and that was awesome. And I was like, I don't know, like if I just thought that they were just super cute. Like, I don't know, I didn't really put it 2 and 2 together that they would be getting all of these CDs, but It worked. We got on the radar. So, nice. Most of the time we didn't get to stay, but when we did, it was awesome.
That's cool. And so all of those sales were prior to you being able to open up for them. So it wasn't like, hey, we caught this big break first, now let us, find out a way to take advantage of it, or, to maximize your reach. It was like you identified someone and said, here's what we're going to do, because basically that's your custom audience,
Mm,
in real life that you're looking for. It's like, oh yeah, we want people that are fans of this band. That's pretty cool.
mm. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you can bet that when we were going on tour with them too, that before each show we were going out and we were meeting everyone online and saying, "Hey,
Hmm.
guess what? We're actually opening and we'd love to connect." And that was so good too because a lot of times people go to a tour like that and they don't know the opening band and they don't really care that much or they haven't connected with them. But if they
True.
meet you in line, guarantee you their focus is going to be a lot more. They're like, "Oh man, I know that person. I met them. Like, that's
Yeah,
cool."
that's great. Awesome. So cool. So tour hacking, um, and you're kind of putting some gas on the flamethrower there. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So tour hacking, it's great. It's like gasoline because it can be really explosive in a short amount of time. We had one band who there's two guys in the band and they went out and they did this and made $11,000 in a single month. And that's awesome.
That's great.
The issue with tour hacking is a very obvious issue that at the point that we're recording this, we're in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and there's not like a lot of tours or live shows happening. And
Hmm.
so even before this happened, really when we started this business, I was basically shouting from the rooftops, everyone go tour hacking. This is one of the best things that ever happened for our band. And it was true. And the people who did it, were kicking butt. But the thing is, most of our people that we're meeting with were like, I've got a family and kids, or, I've got a day job. And, just going out and beating strangers in lines sounds kind of scary and intimidating. Is there any way to do this virtually that's more accessible?
Right.
And that was really the seed of what started what we call virtual tour hacking now. It was basically trying to figure out, is there a way to do tour hacking, but to do it virtually so you don't have to go meet people in lines for shows. And so in a nutshell, the exact same thing that we did when we were tour hacking, we would walk up, we would introduce ourselves, we would share our clips of our songs, and then we would make an offer for the CD. We essentially do that same thing now, but we do it through messenger campaigns. And what that means is, we've invested over $130,000 in the past year to test out different traffic sources, see what's working best right now. And easily right now, what's working best for us is these messenger campaigns, which basically it's so stupid simple, like that out of everything that this is the thing that's working best right now. But essentially it's exactly like tour hacking, but done, virtually. So for example, the ad looks like it's like a 20-second video where you just say, "Hey, my name is Michael. I play keyboard in a band called Paradise Fears. And basically, I'm a huge fan of All Time Low. And I think if you like their music, you might like our music too. So if you're interested, then click on send message button below. I'm going to send you a clip of one of our songs. Talk to you soon." Like an intro, just like that, face to
Yeah.
face, vertical camera. You're holding your phone.
Hmm.
And it's absolutely crushing it right now. In fact, the biggest issue for our artists is that they reach this point where it's like usually within the first week, they're getting too many messages and they can't keep up with the demand.
Mm.
And so then we have to start building some automation and start using some different tools with Janus AI and Dialogflow and ManyChat and these geeky, like basically we build like an AI bot that has these conversations with fans so that you can leverage your time better. Um,
So we'll call that a good problem.
it's a
Yeah.
high quality problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Very cool.
Yep. So that's in a nutshell, that's virtual tour hacking, and that's probably for 99% of the artists we're working with right now. That's what we help them launch.
Hmm.
And the third strategy that we see working really well right now is what we call hyper networking. And if you want an example of hyper networking, then you don't have to look very far because that's kind of essentially what we're doing here today for you right now is essentially like hyper networking,
Yeah.
which is essentially putting your logs next to another fire that's already going. So if you have any friends or you have a network of artists that have an audience already, then doing a collaboration, a feature, and just connecting with them is a great way to light your fire as well. The only issue with that is that a lot of times if you're just starting out, you don't really have a fire going, then it can be challenging to get some of those opportunities because you don't really have much to offer in exchange yet. And usually there's like a 1+1 type thing that happens with this where there's a benefit for both parties because you each have a fire going. So that being said, if you have the network, if you have the fire already, that's a great thing you should start digging into. Otherwise, it might be good to really focus on getting your first 5 to 10,000 dedicated fans using a strategy like this or this, and then starting to leverage some of those partnerships.
Very cool. And so then So with our community and with the training we've got going on, again at the time that we're recording this, we are in the midst of our live stream strategies workshop, our month long topic. Where would you see the best place, maybe for live streaming, to fit into this diagram? I know you
Mm.
can live stream. It's just one type of content you can live stream at any point in the customer journey, etc. But where would you see it best being fit in here for, say, some of our artists that are watching this?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to figure out what the best analogy for this would be. But basically, I think that live streams are one of the most powerful tools that you have right now for connecting with a fan base that's already, like interested in what you have and is already starting to connect with you. So I think live streaming is just such a powerful way to build a relationship and to connect with your fans, that I think that the best place it really fits in here is probably going to be, if you had something like this. Really, the benefit of this is that it's driving new traffic. Like, you're bringing in new fans who'd never heard of you before, and you're bringing them in your community. But once they're in your community, then basically that's just going to go stale if you're not constantly connecting with them and delivering value and building a relationship. So I think that really live streaming is probably the most valuable thing you can do right now to connect with an audience that's either being added there by like a hyper networking, like, it's a great way to connect with people that way. Or if you have an existing audience right now, it's a really great way to build a deeper connection with those people.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, and we've talked about different aspects of it, and I've gotten a chance to talk to several artists, some within our community, some that are not, but some of them are using live streaming in a lot of different ways, and you know some of them are using tip jars, some of them are not. So just depending on maybe what the purpose of it is, would definitely kind of determine where in this diagram, or at least where in the fan base journey, the type of live stream could fit in. But just getting the fans in the door so that you have an audience to actually present your live streams to, or to actually have people watching your live stream, is definitely a good strategy.
yeah, and there are some cool things you can probably do in terms of, I mean, there's probably like a word of mouth referral type of strategy you can do. Like, if you do have people watching your live stream, then you could organically try to grow it by having them invite their friends. And there are some things I know with like Instagram Live, you can do things where it's like you bring someone onto the live stream and it notifies all their friends. And so that can be a way to kind of like organically use that to reach new people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like one of the best ways right now for you to be able to build a genuine connection with people, because we love live stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the best ways, just in terms of geeky digital marketing kind of stuff. But the whole know, like, and trust factor, the awareness, and I think you even talked about cold, warm, and hot audiences. But it's one of those ways that people can get to know you even more quickly than maybe a static post or an image, or even a pre-recorded video, because people are able to interact. And if you're on a live stream, for example, you can bring on Morgan's comments, or if they're making song requests, you can do stuff real time. And so yeah, there's definitely a place for that. And I love this whole analogy: the flamethrower, the gas, the hyper networking, the tip of the iceberg content. So yeah, what just in terms of the virtual tour hacking, do you have like maybe some examples, or some different types of tips that you might offer, just in terms of maybe people watching, of like a couple of things that you've seen work really well?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say probably the next biggest mistake I see people running into after they figure this out, because there's, just because you boost a post and you start driving a bunch of traffic to one of your posts doesn't necessarily mean that it's sustainable, or that you're going to be able to keep doing it. And so I think that the next biggest thing after you start digging into this paid traffic strategy is really building a funnel and thinking about the back end of what are you going to do when you use paid traffic. And so probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see is what we call the rain catcher. And the rain catcher uses the analogy that, let's say that you do boost a post, then it's kind of like temporarily, it's like you're creating the storm. It's like you're making it rain, and the exposure is the rain, right? And so if you're boosting a post, there's also another way to think about it. If you get like a big opportunity or a placement somewhere, and it's like all of a sudden you have this huge opportunity, you hear about a lot of one-hit wonders who, this was their biggest issue, was that they had this storm, and as this was happening, they're kind of standing down here, holding out their hands, and unfortunately, like the storm always passes. It's always like a temporary type of thing. And if all you do is like hold out your hands, then after the rain passes, then you're left with what's in your hands. So what we recommend instead is building what we call rain catchers, and which is another way of saying funnels that allow you to really capture the rain, so that you're able to build a deeper relationship with your fans, so that it doesn't just necessarily go into the ground. And so to do that, we recommend building a contact list using something called a CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Manager. And my favorite one right now is ActiveCampaign. I think that they're fantastic, but there's a ton of different ones. If you just Google best CRM, there's like MailChimp, there's ActiveCampaign, Constant Contact, Infusionsoft, and the idea is that you have this database of emails and phone numbers that are so powerful because maybe 1 in 1,000 people that likes your Facebook page will actually see any of your posts. And with a phone number list, pretty much every single person that you send that to is going to see it. So it's super powerful. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see in terms of building the rain catcher is that I love this part. Like, this is a new character that I came up with, and it's one of my favorite things to do.
Hit me. What you got?
It's kind of like we have this farmer friend named Facebook, and he's over here and he's like, "Howdy, y'all! Wait, so you don't have any of those rain catchers? Don't worry about it. You can use one of my rain catchers. I got 2 of them. We got Facebook and Instagram. Feel free, like, you can use my rain catchers." And that's what a lot of people do. A lot of artists is that we think, oh great, like, that's social media, like that's where it's at. Like, I'm just going to build my audience there. And the problem is that you might generate this rain, but then you don't own this rain catcher. And so then all of a sudden Facebook's just like, well, you know what? Actually, these are my rain catchers, and if you want to reach those people, then you gotta pay me some money,
right?
And and it's like it's their rain catchers, and so technically, like, they have a right to it. And so and it's not necessarily a huge problem if, like, in a lot of ways, their whole business model relies around advertising, and there's a lot of benefits to figuring out paid traffic. And so, I think great for Facebook and Instagram for wanting to build a business and for giving us the opportunity to reach the right people. But I have had quite a few friends who it's like, they had hundreds of thousands of likes on their Facebook page, then overnight basically lost that entire list because Facebook decided to change the rules of the game, and you can't reach those people now without paying them. And so really what we recommend is building your own rain catcher. And maybe you can still use these platforms, really. Like, you can still use these platforms, but maybe you dump them into your rain catcher over here. And that's so powerful because the next time you release a song on Spotify, really, you have this window when you first release it, like the first 24 hours. If you can get 10,000 streams in the first 24 hours, that's going to significantly boost your odds of getting on editorial playlists and triggering the algorithm. And so it's really, really powerful to have that in your pocket, to be able to build a deeper relationship with those people and to let them know when you have something that's worth seeing for them.
That's very cool. And so it's it's got a place. Social media. There's people there already. There's people that are millions of people logging on to Facebook and social media like every single day, and they're not logging into your email every day. They're not doing that. But if you're able to use that, top of funnel social media, huge rain catcher, and I love that analogy of like using those to then funnel them down to your actual list. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and obviously that's how you can, have those one-on-one conversations with people. And actually, I had on your list, I had email and text. I should also say messenger.
Mm.
And yeah, is there, in your rain catcher, funnel, so to speak, do you find that getting people and having conversations with them in Messenger is a great, I shouldn't say great, do you need to have people, in your opinion, on Messenger and on email, or is one or other a good,
Yeah.
a good quality enough contact?
Yeah. I would highly recommend, regardless of what social media platform you're using, like you need to build your own list with emails and
Mm-hmm.
phone numbers, because you don't know when Facebook is going to die or when Instagram's going to die, or they change the rules.
That's true.
And so even Messenger is owned by Facebook, and so they've already changed the rules a few times, where it's like,
I bet.
where they made it a lot more difficult to reach people. So I see Messenger kind of the same way as I see a lot of the social media platforms, is being a great way to a transition from where they're at right now to where you can connect with them more. So the messenger, I see that as sort of an in between to get them into your private community. So you have this short conversation, but then you get them into your private community, which you could do in a private Facebook group, or you could do on Instagram. Really, you could host it. You could host it on StreamYard. You could do live streams on
Mm-hmm.
StreamYard, and just do it strictly through emails, and you'll probably get just as many, if not more, people to your live streams doing it that way than if you're just doing it organically
Right.
on Facebook.
Nice. And that's a great way to look at that too. Just being able to, not just get people on your list, but it's also, nurturing that list and being able to provide them with, with content and, being able to let them into your world and, become a part of what you're doing. Because I like how you mentioned earlier on in this, where it was like, until they maybe are aware of you or get to know you, they might not be as engaged with your quote unquote personal stuff or maybe some of the other things. So maybe thinking about, stacking your content in that way, or, that whole tip of the iceberg analogy. That
Mm.
um, and so yeah, if you, I see a few people, additional people that have tuned in. If you've got questions for Michael, please let me know and just type them in there, and I would love to actually share these. But could you tell me once again? I was trying to take notes, but just talking about, if we can back up really quickly to what you've seen do best as the tip of the iceberg content. So if you guys are just getting started, I know in our artist collective community last month, Willie Chill talked all about actually Facebook ads and building your funnel and things like that. And today, this month we're talking about live streaming. So there's a lot of different points of entry that you may be talking to people. So Michael, just I'd love if you could just go back real quick and just from your experience and what you've seen, like the types of content that are working well to like your cold top of the funnel type of audience.
Yeah, really good question. So with this strategy in particular, with the messenger conversations, what we've seen working best is, so basically, you start this conversation. So you had the intro video where you're just like, hey, I've got some music that I think you might like if you're a fan of blank and blank. And so they click on send message, and then you're like, hey, here's the song. I'd love to hear what you think. So basically, it's like you sending your song a lot of times on like a private streaming link, either like SoundCloud, or it could be a public one. I mean, ideally, you have like a YouTube video that's awesome, like great quality that people really connect with. Doesn't necessarily mean it's like it needs to be super produced or whatever. It just needs to be like
Right.
a good video.
Yeah.
Ideally, that's what you have, but also it works incredibly well just with like a streaming link, right? So like private. And what we found too is that if you can give people a couple different options where you could ask them, are you in the mood for this, and this? And then you give them like the song based on that. Or if you have an unreleased song that you're getting ready to release and you haven't publicly released it yet, it's even better. But, I mean, a lot of times, one of the mistakes that I see is like a lot of artists put so much energy and effort and money into publicly releasing their new EP or album, and they haven't built an audience yet at all. And so it's kind of like they do like this dance and throw the logs into the fire, and then it's like nothing happens, and it's kind of it can feel a little bit discouraging, embarrassing, because it's like you put so much, you try to push it so hard, and then it's like nothing really happened because you didn't have an audience yet. So
Gotcha.
a lot of times what we recommend is starting with like a paid traffic scenario, where even if the song is not publicly released yet, when you share the song, you could say, hey, so this song is actually, it's not released yet. Could I trust you to keep it a secret? And then they're listening, they're like, ooh, like that's cool. Like if they, it's like they haven't. And now it's like they can say like, yeah, I listened to that song before it was publicly released. It's like a cool thing to be able to say. And so then if you build your first 5,000 to 10,000 people in your audience of people that are actually connecting with the music, and then you publicly release it, then you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck, as opposed to like, a lot of times organic launches do best if there is some sort of existing audience, or else it's like you're doing this huge launch and there's just not really a lot of people aside from your friends and family that are really listening right away.
Gotcha. Okay. And hey, what's up, Mel? How are you doing? Thank you so much for your question. Let me take a look at it here real quick. You're running a campaign partnered with an audio brand to get people to follow their Instagram page while giving away their products with your merch. Okay, so co-branding. Do you suggest I set up a campaign through ActiveCampaign to have people do multiple things for entries in the giveaway? For example, follow their Instagram is one entry, tag people for extra entries, and follow YouTube email for entries. Okay.
Wow, that's a pretty advanced question.
Yeah. Shoot.
So one thing,
That's nice.
I mean, this is totally like under wraps right now. So this is something we're developing right now in our back end. But I feel like one of the next biggest things that we're working on right now is an app, a software as a service that basically does that. And I know there's a few other ones that do something similar like that. There's like Gleam, there's TuneSpeak, there's ToneDen. You can look into those if you're doing some sort of contest like that. They've already built an app like that. So we're trying to do kind of our take on that / mix with like some other stuff. So working on something like that. In regards to you right now launching this ActiveCampaign, I don't know if they have like I don't think they have a built-in feature that's going to let you like create this contest and like points, unless you do some like seriously advanced automation stuff on the back end, because it's not necessarily designed with that specifically in mind. You could keep track of some of that stuff. Basically what you need to do, because you'd have to plug into the APIs for Instagram and stuff. And so you'd be better off going with one of those platforms right now if you want to do a contest and reward people based on points.
Yeah. So ToneDen, I know, is one. Show.co is one. You said Gleam?
Yeah, Gleam.io is one.
Mute myself, I have to cough.
I like making sound effects in place of your coughs.
All right.
That was more fun than I even thought it would be.
Oh, man. No, that's great. Cool. So, yes, thank you for the question, Mel. And yeah, Mel is one of our artist collective community, and we've been talking a lot about our Facebook rules that technically haven't changed, but because of the October 1st edition, a lot of us are just now seeing the 2018 rules that have been in place the whole time.
A lot of panic around this, yeah.
Yeah, but for artists that and this is probably something to consider as well as you're considering the type of content that you're producing, is that if you have any sort of recorded tracks that are a part of your presentation, like there might need to be a new strategy in some way, shape, or form. I know plenty of artists that have gotten the message that, hey, we just posted your video, but this section and this section have been muted. Or if you own this, that's cool, let us know. If not, then post it muted, or some people had stuff taken down. I know Mel has, first of all, she's got an amazing voice and arranged like I've never heard before. But she does a lot of really cool stuff in addition to her original stuff. But she'll do like a Beatles '60s night kind of thing, and like do all kinds of cool stuff. But she's doing some pivoting and things like that. So I'm glad to hear you got some really cool, additional things going on too. But definitely appreciate the question. And speaking of questions, we've got our guy Mark. What's up, Mark? He said he's keen to hear, and Mark is a digital marketer as well. I should say a digital music marketer as well, also in the music biz. But keen to hear some about some of the targeting you do for your band, or for your bands maybe. Do you focus on the U.S. or are you also seeing success with Europe, for example?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, I would say for the majority of our artists, we do US, mostly because they're US based. But we do have a few artists overseas that we work with, and they've had success doing Europe targeting. So it's more of a matter of, I mean, in our case, I would say the first thing we always start out with is doing targeting just based on similar artists and people that they might like. And then from there, we have to do some qualification, because just because someone likes a page on Facebook doesn't mean that they're like a fan that actually goes out to shows and spends money at shows. With tour hacking, those are very high quality qualified people, because they're waiting in lines for a show. They've already spent money. Whereas like with Facebook and Instagram, it's like a lot of people, they click like on a page. They're not really like a serious fan. So you have to have some sort of qualification system to filter out people who aren't really that dedicated, and then create lookalike audiences based on the people who are really engaging.
Nice.
Yeah. So does that answer that question? So yeah. So it works US overseas. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. And yeah, Mel's like, hey, I'm part of Michael's community as well. Awesome.
Oh,
what's up?
cool.
So yeah, the great questions, you guys. And yeah, Michael, just the content and things that you're sharing, and even the targeting and all of those things. A lot of those things, like you said, probably something to keep an eye out on, because this is the wave right now. And, it could, obviously with pandemic and different things like that, things are changing very, very quickly in the online space, especially with social media. I mean, I think there's been probably, 14 or 15 like major updates to Facebook in like the last 6 months, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot when you're trying to promote and get your music out there and stuff. But yeah, so thank you for that info. And as we start to wrap up a little bit, guys, please continue with what other questions you have for Michael. I'd love to see if we could get those answered. But I also wanted to ask you, Michael, about your success with Music Conference. I know that you have you done 2 or 3 of these?
Yep. So we did our third one in May. And so, yeah, basically the Success with Music Conference is a virtual music conference that it's been virtual for the past 3 years, but especially this last year, it needed to be virtual, where one of the first things that I did with Modern Musician was reached out to a few different music mentors who had already established. It was basically hyper networking, like we talked about in a nutshell. And I didn't have an audience at all of musicians, really. Like we just had people who liked our music. And so we needed to start from scratch. And so I basically found the people who had built audiences, who were also like really had a ton of value, had really great insights in regards to like licensing, in regards to songwriting. We had multi-platinum songwriters sharing tips on how to write hit songs. We had a few different people that have made literally millions of dollars in music licensing that were sharing the best tips to get your music licensed on TV and film. We had Rick Barker, who was the former manager of Taylor Swift on the conference. And so basically, once a year, we do this live event where over the course of 3 days, we share a bunch of different speakers, and it's a lot of fun, and everyone learns a ton. And it's like kind of like it's like a lot of information in a short amount of time, but it's awesome. that being said, one thing is that we realized is that a lot of people, they missed the live event. They couldn't attend the entire thing. And so we basically took 4 of the best interviews that got the most feedback from people, and people said were most valuable in terms of licensing your music, in terms of like writing songs from like the multi-platinum songwriter. And we put those available for free in the form of this virtual music conference. And so looks like we got a handy dandy little link at the bottom of the screen now. That's cool.
What?
And so and so that's a gift for you with normally it costs $197 now to purchase the replays for it, but you get it for free because you guys are awesome and you're here with the Artist Collective community, and so that's our gift to you.
Oh, I appreciate that, definitely. And when is when is it typically hosted, and then are you planning on hosting the fourth anytime soon?
Yeah, so we usually do it in like the summer, and so we just did it at the end of May. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a wait until the next live one.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, good deal. So yes, I feel like we've got a few questions. We got a couple more people that have jumped in, but this is an interview. This is our music industry chat. It'll be part of our podcast here on the Artist Collective, and we will also make this available to our members inside our membership area so that you can access it when you're in there taking your courses and your content. But Michael, this has been awesome. Mark, Mel, everyone tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. And please feel free to add additional questions to the comments and to the chat, even after, we might not have been live, and we'll do what we can to actually get some answers for you. Even though this is live, if you're watching this on replay, we'd love to help you get your answers, get your questions answered, and help you, share your music. So, Michael, any last words or bits of encouragement for our audience as we get wrapped up today?
Yeah, I'll say just thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. This is I think our third time that we've connected, and every time it's been good. We've related about being dads, and we've made some bops and some songs together on the spot. So it's a pleasure pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. In terms of like last words of wisdom or advice, is basically, I think at the beginning, before you've really established yourself as an artist and you've gotten success, there's going to be this initial phase that's like really, really challenging. It's like at the very beginning where the people around you, as much as they might want to support you, it might be kind of difficult or it might be hard for them to understand. And there's gonna be a lot of fear and like risk around it. And even in your own head, there's going to be this doubt because you haven't necessarily had the success yet. And you're going to question, can I really do this? Is it really possible? Am I good enough? And that's so normal at the beginning. And you really have to literally drive that belief into yourself. And so like I recommend having like a morning routine where part of it's like visualization and really kind of getting clear on your goals, what you want, and seeing yourself as having those things and already being that person. And, kind of driving that belief into yourself. And then taking screenshots of things that verify that the things that you want to have happen are happening, and just like, pushing that into yourself, because you might not necessarily get that from your environment at the beginning, but you'll get that as you build the success.
I love that. That one of the things that, as a booking agent, I would always try to help or advise artists that were coming to me. For example, they'd say, hey, we're just getting started and we're playing these clubs and events, but we want to play corporate events for more money. We want to play festivals or weddings or something like that. And I would basically tell them to like foreshadow. It's like, okay, if you want to play corporate events, you need to not only look at who is actually booking them and who, what the environment is, but go ahead and do a photo shoot as if this was your 100th corporate event. You can't dress, quote unquote, for the club and then expect to get the higher paying gigs and corporate stuff like that. But it's basically like, kind of, they say dress for the job that you want. That's kind of what it was like, dress for the gigs that, you want to get. And if if you know that typically people are going to be wearing suits or ties or, something like that, that's the imagery that, you would want to see yourself in, but also the one that you would want to project. So just that whole future casting. And I think you even mentioned this in one of the other, podcasts with Ariel, but, I'd love that example of taking the screenshots of, just affirmations really of, your work and what you're doing. And, it doesn't matter if it's a gatekeeper, guys. It doesn't matter who it is. If someone has made a comment on one of your posts or one of your songs and they said that they love what they hear, screenshot it, because there can never be enough motivation to share your gifts and to share your music and your messages with the world. So capture those so that you don't lose them. And actually was reminded of that by watching a previous webinar with Michael, so I thank you for that reminder.
You got it, man. Yeah, it's huge. It's important at the beginning to give yourself that faith.
Definitely. Awesome. All right, gang, that is going to do it for today. We've talked quite a bit about Fanbase growth tips and just different types of content that can work, and rain catchers and flamethrowers, and we met an awesome farmer Facebook that was phenomenal. Like I'm going to mark that timestamp on this video because you need to show that to your voice.
Hi, y'all.
Boom. All right. Well, Michael, thank you again for your time. I hope to work with you again soon. And yeah, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Leonard with the Artist Collective, and this has been our music industry chat. You guys have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya. Where's my little thing? Here we go.